All right, good evening and welcome to the first night of our Fire Sprinkler CAD Basics Bootcamp. This week is the introduction. I'm your host, Colby Stachwick, and we have a lot to cover, so let's move into our slides. So, I want to welcome everybody to tonight's presentation. I am the owner, the Chief Operating Officer of mCAD, and we provide document services for the architecture and engineering and construction industry. And tonight's presentation is an overview of the mCAD Fire Sprinkler design training process. This is the first night of our 8-week program to teach our process of fire sprinkler system design. And just a little bit about myself real quick to let you know why you might care to hear about this information from me. I started my career in fire sprinklers back in 1999 after learning AutoCAD on DOS in high school in the 90s, and started working for small fire sprinkler contractor, and started several businesses on the side. My wife and I starting in 2003. 2018, we started branding mCAD and pursuing multiple clients. And the purpose of mCAD, like I said, is to help architects, engineers, and contractors improve their product. And because of my history with fire sprinklers, the first side offshoot of mCAD that we are going to be launching is safeguardfirecad.com. It's not yet launched, but it's coming, so look for that soon. And helping me tonight behind the scenes, we have my friend Chris Carrasco, as well as my lovely wife Monica, pushing the buttons. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment in the chat and they can help you. And just so everybody is on the same page, we are here at the first week of the Fire Sprinkler CAD Basics Bootcamp. So if that's not where you thought you were, now you know this is where we are. All right, and again, this is week 1, so we're going to be going through an 8-week process, an overview of how we do it. So week 1. Now, just so everybody knows, typical 8 weeks, we meet here at this time, 5 p.m. And like I was mentioning earlier, I believe, I try to keep the lecture to about an hour and then immediately followed by a Q&A session. So every Thursday here at this Zoom link, if you made it here tonight, should be able to make it the following 7 weeks. So a couple things we want to start off with for our information tonight. We're talking about a couple terms that we want to define. We'll be using these a lot, throwing them around. CAD and BIM. Okay, so CAD stands for Computer Aided Drafting or Design. And BIM is another commonly used word in the industry, and that stands for Building Information Modeling. Now, you may have a CAD program that is just a CAD program, or you may have a CAD program that is also a BIM program. So it has CAD capabilities, but then the information modeling means that the program knows things, for example, like that a door is a door, a window is a window, pipe is pipe, sprinklers are sprinklers. So it has different capabilities with that it can count the quantities and things of that nature that are handy. So, both CAD and BIM have their advantages. CAD is really, if you want to think about back when we did hand drafting on a board, lines, paper, when we are talking about CAD tonight, 2D CAD is what we're referring to. It's really just a digital version of that. So we can draw whichever one we want. But they're different. CAD is drawing pretty much anything. BIM also draws things, but the information or the model that you draw has information in it. And so, there's, again, we're going to go into these terms more this evening. So which one of these is better? Because it's often presented as this one or the other scenario. A lot of people go through the school systems learning CAD and kind of become fanboys of, hey, I'm on the AutoCAD club. I think 2D CAD is the bee's knees. Or now AutoCAD does 3D as well. So, it's kind of a different world these days. But other people go to school learning Revit. Their school happens to have a contract with Revit or whatever, and so they learned on that software. They come out thinking that that's the best software, the only one we should use. But how do we really know which one's better? Well, we can't just blanketly say. The truth is that it really depends. But the difference can mean thousands of dollars. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. What can go wrong if we, the manufacturers who make these products, they make it sound like you just press buttons and things happen magically. Now, if you do an awful lot of work setting things up, that can eventually happen, but they don't tell you about that part of it, and they don't tell you how hard that part of it is. And, you are just one component. When we're talking about, we're doing projects, construction projects, so there's multiple trades. The reality is in the field, it's very hard to pin a subcontractor down to one program. But there are more and more projects requiring Revit. So what is this phenomenon of Revit? I've got this meme that I'm sharing from Reddit. I don't know if everybody's familiar with Reddit. It's kind of like a more nerdy version of Facebook, if you're not familiar. But so in the MEP section, MEP engineering subreddit, there was this meme playing Uno. On the Uno card says, get the ceiling grid right the first time, or draw 25. And there's an architect with, a handful of cards. And so if you're not familiar with the industry, why this is funny, I'm going to show you some more Reddit posts. Let me see. Let me go back. Okay, I made some bigger slides to make it a little easier so you can read along with me. So here we go. This is a comment from that same post that I just showed earlier, which was with the architect funny meme. The people in the comments says, 2 days before stamp plans are due. Hi guys, here's the corrected RCP. That's the reflected ceiling plan. There wasn't any real changes other than I just shifted the grid 4 inches. So people in here who know, like, this is a nightmare thing that happens all the time. If we're just talking about fire sprinklers, all the fire sprinklers are in the ceiling grid that now is moved 4 inches. You would think it would be very straightforward, but it's actually very labor intensive and meticulous to work with these kinds of changes. So this engineer responds, my response is just no, as in a complete sentence. If that fails, I submit an ad service request. Revit has seriously enabled twitchy architects who just have to play around with dinky shit and cannot help themselves. I don't know how they make any money when their designers are just playing around all day, moving grids and doors a few inches for 1,000 rooms, 3 to 4 times per job. And that's the kind of thing that happens. So let's go. This wasn't from the same. I'm not going to read the entire thing. I'll try and skim through this, but this was actually that post was from the first time I ran this course 6 months ago, and I went on to Reddit to see what the most recent thing I could find, and this was from 22 days ago. Long rant. It says I'll try to skim. I'll get hate because I always do when I say this, but Revit is a pain in the ass and is only needed a small amount of the time, unless you're doing mechanical rooms or having serious conflict areas. So this is a mechanical engineer specifically talking about HVAC systems, but this is very similar to piping. He says, I see Revit being used in lieu of knowing how to engineer. I imagine the goal with Revit is that it'll do all the engineering and then you just need a drafter to make the connections. Instead of knowing how ductwork and fittings can be connected, you're left with a couple of off-the-shelf choices. Not to mention the childlike graphics with ridiculous line weights, text, using draft lines, and so on. Also, setting the project is a huge pain in the ass. I've been using Revit since 2017, and I still hate it. Okay. See, this is just going to go into the beginning of this next paragraph. I can always tell people who learned how to draft from hand drafting or using AutoCAD versus someone who's only ever used Revit. It's easy because the latter just vomits info onto the page without any thoughts of clarity, or if anyone will actually be able to use the drawings after it's been in the field for several decades. With people that hand drafted or learned on AutoCAD, there's more of a sense of what to show, how to show it, being concise. It's like there's hardly any thought process on what to show now. They just cram as much info on each sheet. Okay, let's go. I think I just got 2 more I want to skim through. I'm just trying to really get you guys to understand this isn't just me. Because a lot of people that are learning about Fire Sprinkler CAD programs have no background in CAD. So they only know what the salesmen are telling them. And so just trying to give some background reference. This guy's comment from the last response says, do you think old school drafters magically knew how to make the plans good? No, it was trained. The same way you have to train the new generation to put effort into making Revit look good. And so he's got a great point. That's a valid concern. But then he says, I admit there is a handful of things I struggle to make look good in Revit. So he's an experienced user. He likes it. And he's admitting there's things that he can't make look the way he wants to. But if your Revit prints by and large look like shit and people drawing the content don't know how to place things correctly and modify the views, templates, whatever, to look right, then the older generation is not teaching the new generation how to draft correctly, which I would agree with him on that. But then if I skip down a couple paragraphs, it says, it can become more cumbersome than AutoCAD to make it look good, but it can be done. Okay, so this is like, this guy doesn't understand, like he's defeating his own argument if he understood business. There are certain jobs where it makes sense to take the time, longer time that it takes to do it in Revit, but lots of times there are not. That's the point we're trying to get at. And this person's response says, yeah, I get it's changing. It's not that Revit is bad. It's a program that is intended to do more than what is typically used for. As a glorified double-line duct polyline, I see the industry changing from looking at buildings as a system and being well-rounded to only learning an industry, as it's easier to get better at repeating those designs while relying on software programs rather than using them as a tool. So that's really what, a good summary of the problem, from other people's mouth. Like Revit and these other Revit extensions for fire sprinklers that we'll be talking about a little bit. There's a time and place for them, absolutely, and they can be great time savers. The thing is many jobs it's not needed and not necessary, and we're talking about thousands of dollars. So before we go to that step, what can we do without that? So what can go wrong if we, go all in on Revit because the salesman told us that we don't need to waste our time with 2D CAD? Well, we could potentially waste a lot of time and money. And so that's what I'm getting at here. We start with 2D CAD in our course because there's a time and place for everything. Start with 2D. As we're gonna be going through. There's lots of reasons why, and when it's worth it, we will go to BIM. But our system is software agnostic, so we don't care what software you use, just as long we're using. I might be jumping ahead, but we are using DWG editing software. AutoCAD invented the DWG format. It's basically like when PDFs were designed by Adobe, but now we use many programs besides Adobe Reader or Adobe Pro to read a PDF. Many manufacturers can make a program that reads that. Microsoft Word documents. Now there's many competitors to Microsoft Word that can even open the Microsoft Word documents. In the same way, AutoCAD invented the 2D DWG, and many software companies out there are compatible with this now. And not many of them are known in the fire sprinkler trade, so we're going to be trying to expose some of these. So when I say software agnostic, that refers to a system, like I said, that works consistently regardless of any particular brand of software that it may use. So why start with 2D? I mentioned that a little bit. We're going to run through some reasons. Cost effective. So as you're going to see, it's generally miles less expensive than BIM, building information modeling software. Simplicity. It's much easier to learn and use, especially for people like fire sprinkler contractors that have limited CAD skill experience. Whoever you are, it's just 2D CAD's easier to learn to start if you have no experience. Speed. It's much faster produced simple drawings and modifications for straightforward projects. Some projects are, if you think about fire sprinklers, we are literally on a paper putting dots and lines connecting them. So it couldn't get much simpler than that. We can put the dots in the right place and get the lines connecting them correctly. We can do that pretty quick, By hand, you could draw that quick. Shouldn't take very long on a computer either. And with CAD, it doesn't. But BIM, it can take 10 times as long for a small project. Now, another thing is hardware requirements. If a lot of you are coming to this with not a heavy computer user experience, you might not have a very advanced computer, but these 2D CAD programs can run on older software pretty well. The thing that you will eventually run into a limitation with is when you are getting files from an architect, eventually when you're working on a big enough job, the file you get from them will be too much for your computer. And so the software that you can use to start to learn and the sample files that we give you are all pretty small. And you can run these on a pretty minimal computer. Okay, so another benefit is specific needs. And like I was talking about smaller projects. Like if someone wants to hire you to come in and move 3 sprinklers and the jurisdiction says you have to have a drawing of that, the person who wants you to move 3 sprinklers is not going to want to pay for a 3D drawing of this. They want like lines and dots and minimal thing to get a permit. It just doesn't make sense in those types of situations. Now, this thing here, legacy drawings, what we're talking about, AutoCAD has been around forever, the DWG format. I started on AutoCAD 10 in high school on DOS. Basically they've come out with a new iteration every year. because they think they need to come out with something, but everything they've added every year is still in it. And so there's all these old drawings that people have. Maybe they're in Revit now or something like that, but 10 years ago they weren't. And so the legacy drawings, if you're working on an old building and you happen to be lucky enough to get some sort of CAD file, it's likely to be a DWG, a 2D CAD file, not a Revit file. Okay, and so what about when a situation when there are no drawings? Now, it doesn't make sense to recreate an entire building in BIM in 3D just to draw the sprinklers. I mean, there are situations where that could be the case, but many times it just doesn't make sense. Uh-oh. Let's see. We already went over these. Ah, yes, okay. Here we go. These are the next definitions, though. Hydraulic calc software. So I guess maybe I had this to have a reminder. So we've been talking about CAD, which is the DWG format, and BIM, we're predominantly talking about the program called Revit, which is an RVT format. But there's other companies that deal with that, but we're not going to be getting into that too much in this course. But for this next part, talking about the cost of software, I do want you to understand one of the benefits of the Fire Sprinkler specific software that's out there is that it has integrated hydraulic calculations. There's definitely benefits to that, and that's great. But we also are going to show you standalone hydraulic calculation software where you don't need it's not integrated into a CAD program. You don't have to draw it. You could calc a system that was on a piece of paper, no problem. That's basically what we use here, the type of standalone calc programs. But anyway, so there's in Fire Sprinklers, besides producing the DWG CAD drawing, which is mainly what this course is dealing with, but we're going to cover some stuff. Oops, let me go back. We're going to cover some stuff on options and a little bit about hydraulic calcs. And basically, that software, just for everybody who is not familiar with sprinklers yet, it helps us determine what size the pipe needs to be to make sure that there is adequate water flowing at the sprinklers inside the building based on the pressure at the street where we are connected to the city main. And the next thing that I want to talk about, define, is a software extension. As we're going over these different programs, these things are going to be helpful to understand. So a software extension is a type of program that is meant to extend or add on to what another program is able to do. And many of these sprinkler-specific programs are extensions to either AutoCAD or Revit. So, and let's see, this is our typical sprinkler programs, okay? This kind of gives you an idea of what we're up against. AutoSprink, this is kind of the deluxe software that's out there. When you go out and search on places like Reddit posts, everyone says this is the best one, and they must believe it for $8,000 to $12,000 to buy it and $1,000 a year to keep it running. Now, I just gathered that from all kinds of internet posts. I have not actually ever entertained purchasing this software myself because I don't understand how we could start out in $8,000 in debt starting a business. But that's another part of the story here. Let's go on to SpringCAD. This one is very popular. This is put out by Johnson Controls. This is a standalone sprinkler software. You don't need to have an extension. Oh, let me back up. AutoSprink is also standalone, but they also have an extension for Revit as an option. I missed saying that on the last one. Now back to SpringCAD. This is made by Johnson Controls. Used to be Tyco. Tyco and Johnson Controls now largest sprinkler manufacturer in the world. You go into as a sprinkler fitter, you walk into the material supply house to pick up your fittings. And on the counter, they have a flyer for SpringCAD. And it's $5,000 and then $1,000 a year to keep it going. And it has a learning curve too. These have the thing about all of these specific sprinkler programs is that they have their own little bit odd way of doing things that are their own learning curve. But all the stuff that we're going to be learning in this course, you could probably do in most of these as well. All the ones that are based on AutoCAD, 100% for sure you could. But which I think you could auto spring too, because they're basically based on CAD, even though you don't have to buy AutoCAD and add it to it. Trying not to get lost in the weeds here. The point is, you notice those first two have calcs. That's really the sweetest thing about them, because it's integrated in. You draw it, and then you can select the area you want it to calc, and you just say calc this area, and it does it. That's cool. But you pay for it. Next one down is Fire ACAD. Now this one's $4,000. Plus you have to pay $250 a year. That seems more reasonable, but you also have to have an AutoCAD subscription, which is, if you'll notice further down, $2,000 a year. So you're talking about $6,000 the first year, plus then, $2,000 plus a year to keep it going. That will do calcs for you. But you notice they only goes up to 2021. They haven't updated it to the newest version of AutoCAD because they're behind. OmniCAD, similar deal, $3,000 plus you have to buy AutoCAD. But they haven't updated it since 2012, but they're still selling it. You can't buy 2012 anymore. You can only buy the current one. They do let you, when you buy a license, they do let you downgrade if you need to. But why would you want to spend $2,000 a year for a 2012 version of AutoCAD? Again, they have calcs. All of these ones we've talked about so far, you have to contact the company and they will show you how they work. They don't have a downloadable free trial. Next one is HydroCAD. Now, it's more affordable, I would say. Now, this is an extension for AutoCAD, though, or Revit for $2,000. So that you're looking at $4,000 to $5,000 the first year, and then $3,000 to $4,000 every year after that. So, all of these we're talking about boatloads of money. And I've been doing fire sprinkler plans as my main source of income for quite some time now. And I don't use those. I have used AutoCAD and Revit, but even now I'm not using those. So let's talk about some other popular options. So the main CAD program out there, AutoCAD. Okay, it's the oldest DWG software. If you want the original, it's $2,000. Okay, and we can do all the drawings, everything we're learning in this program on that. Okay, they have a 15-day free trial. If you want to download it to do this course for a couple weeks, try it out. They have their flagship product is great. It'll work on your Mac as well. Now, Revit, $1,000 more a year. They have a 30-day trial on that. If you really have to do Revit for fire sprinkler drawings, if the Revit model is required, which they are on some, especially government jobs these days, I would just stick with Revit and not use one of those Revit add-ons. Next, we have AutoCAD LT, and I think it's cut off the video here, but I have AutoCAD LT from 1998 back here. That's what I started on in my career back at the first fire sprinkler contractor I was at. And that currently costs $505 a year. And that's pretty affordable. That's if you pay annually. It's more expensive if you pay monthly. They've got a 15-day trial on that, and it does work on Mac. Now, DraftSite Professional, I used this for years. It wasn't initially free when they came out with it. They had another CAD program that they were trying to compete with AutoCAD with. You may have heard of SolidWorks. DraftSite's made by Dassault Systems. They're a French company. And they own SolidWorks, and they were trying to convince people to switch from AutoCAD to SolidWorks. And one thing to do that was they had people say, what do I do with my legacy drawings? We mentioned that earlier. Well, they said, we'll make this free program called DraftSite, and we'll give you that when you buy SolidWorks, and then you can open your legacy files with that. And it was free for a good 10 years. And then 3 or 4 years ago, they started charging it for it. It just kept going up. It started at $100, then it went to 200. Now it's at 3. But I used it for a long time. It's a solid alternative to AutoCAD LT, and it's a stable software program on Mac. So that's what we recommend for Mac for affordable software. Next, we have BricsCAD Pro. Now, this is comparable to full-blown AutoCAD, and you pay $15.96 for it. And you own it. You don't have to pay, every year, keep recurring fees. So that's kind of nice. They have a 30-day free trial with that. And then there's also, and it works on Mac, but their Mac version on both Pro and Lite is not very stable. And so we don't recommend that one. But it's out there. And, you can work with it. It's just, like old school days, I guess you would say, save often because your BricsCAD Lite might crash on a Mac, more likely. Anyway, so, Lite is compared to AutoCAD LT, and that's $708, and you own it, and that's all you pay. So that's decent. They've got a 30-day free trial on that as well. And okay, now this other BricsCAD Lite here I have is if you buy it on a subscription basis, you could pay $314 a year. I suppose if you liked buying things on a subscription basis, you could do that. And so now we're getting into the more affordable options. So ZW CAD Professional perpetual license is out there. It's a full-blown AutoCAD alternative for $11.99. There's a 30-day free trial. No Mac or Linux version though. ProJCAD Professional Perpetual. It's only $469, and you own it forever. And it's basically on par with AutoCAD. CMS IntelliCAD PE+. This is actually what I use and what I recommend for Windows users. It's $369.95 right now. They have a 15-day free trial. And if you sign up for the free trial, inevitably during that period, they will send you a coupon for 50% off. And I and many of people that I know have been able to get that deal, and it's really hard to beat. This is a full-blown AutoCAD program that can import Revit files. It's really phenomenal for the price. And actually, ZW CAD, ProJCAD, and CMS IntelliCAD are all built off of the same platform. There's just different companies trying to sell that. Now, the next one we're showing here, NanoCAD 24, is a little bit cheaper. And it's full-blown AutoCAD. And it also has, included in that, there is a 3D modeling that is similar to the program SketchUp that is pretty cool, I will say. And, but to take this course, you could complete it with NanoCAD 5, which is totally free. The limit on NanoCAD 5 is it's only compatible with up to 2013 DWG files. Like I said, AutoCAD updates AutoCAD every year. So every year they add stuff to it. Whatever was added after 2013, you won't be able to get in NanoCAD 5, the free version. But everything in our course can be accomplished with it. So if you're looking for free software, that is a good option on Windows. That is the one I recommend, actually. If you're on Mac or Linux, you can try QCAD. It's a little bit more challenging to work. It's open source, but it's a viable program. And the biggest problem you will have on there with our template, if you're on Mac or Linux, is getting the fonts to look right. But otherwise, everything should work. And then last on my list here is Autodesk DWG TrueViewer. And this is a really cool program from Autodesk that I want to mention. Autodesk is the maker of AutoCAD and Revit. They make Autodesk DWG TrueViewer for free, and it will open brand new CAD files, and you can save them as an older version. So if an architect sends you a file, he's working on the brand new version of AutoCAD, and it's 2024 version, and you have NanoCAD 5 and you can't open it, you can open it with your Autodesk DWG TrueViewer, save it as a 2013 file, and then you would be able to open it with your NanoCAD 5. So there's workaround options, just want to make you aware of, that are out there. So this is the system requirements for CMS and TeleCAD, and they're not very big is basically the biggest point. But the one that I have circled here, the biggest thing you need is you can't do this stuff without a mouse. It's just not possible. It says you need to have a keyboard and mouse or other pointing device. And you can't do it with, just your touchpad on your laptop or whatever. It's just not, you're going to struggle. Let's talk about hydraulic calculations really quick. We'll go into the stuff that we use in, I think it's week 6. If you want to buy a standalone calc program from SprinkCalc, the Tyco Johnson Control Company, it's $2,500 and then $460 a year to just do calcs. So you could have this free or cheap CAD program, do your drawings, and then pay that to do your calcs, okay? Next option we have down here, Haas from HRS Systems. Now, this is the system that I got trained on back in the day at the first sprinkler company I worked for. Like, I honestly thought it was like the only one out there when I was working there. I had never heard of any other. And when I went out on my own, I couldn't afford. It was way more expensive than this at the time. This has come down quite a bit. It's $1,800 initially, but the thing with their license is that they allow you to have it on 2 machines at that price. And then you pay $900 a year to maintain it. So that's a really solid calc program, and that's really not, that's not too bad of a price. Okay, now Hydronics Commercial is another one that's out there. It's $3,000 and you own it. They have a trial that you can download off their website as well. I have the older version of this, 4.4, which it just does. They still have for sale for half the price on their website, but it's more difficult to get to work on modern computers. I bought it back in the Windows XP era. But nowadays, let's see, I am on the next, I'm on 8800 dashboard hydraulics from Sigma. But before we get to that, I want to just mention HydroCalc. That's another popular option that's out there. It's a little more than affordable, $780 up front and then $480 a year to keep it going. I mean, that's really pretty comparable to Haas if you look at it, pretty close. So then the 88 dashboard hydraulics, that's what we use and what I recommend with all the people that work with me. They don't advertise their price online, but it's a one-time fee. It's not you can pay an annual service fee if you want, but that's optional to get extra assistance with the program. It's not required, but their one-time fee is, it's on par with these, and it's an excellent program. I really like their report the best, which we'll get into on week 6. And then another one that's kind of popular because the entry point is cheaper is Fire from Elite Software. That's been around for a while. They have kind of a weird pricing thing where you can start with their free trial, which last time I tried to do it, I couldn't get it to work, but then you can buy their lowest tier for $699 that you're allowed so many input lines with that. And if you get to the point where you run out of space and need a bigger system to calc, like that's not enough for you, then you can upgrade to the next tier. So, that's popular with a lot of people for that reason, because, you can kind of pay for it over time as you need it. Another new option that has just come out recently is VCalc from Viking Sprinkler. And this is an amazing program. We've played around with a little bit. It's totally free from Viking Sprinklers. You just need to make an appointment with a Viking sales rep and they will hook you up. And this is available as a standalone version and a Revit add-on. So if you needed to produce a drawing in Revit for, say, a project that required it in the contract, you could pay, the cheapest way you could do that basically at this point is paying, for however many months of Revit. The price of $3,000 that we had is the annual price. Theoretically, you could just pay for like 3 months, get by, and then you could use the VCalc extension. That's the cheapest way you could do a Revit job in the fire sprinklers. All right. So just want to mention a couple of these real quick. I know I'm going long-winded. Sorry, Michael Nimitz. Probably going to go over an hour. But something I recommend you check out and play with is SketchUp for web. If you just go to Google SketchUp, you'll find it. It's not made by Google, but if you Google that term, you'll find it. They used to be owned by Google. They sold it to a CAD company called Trimble. We do our details in 3D, Fire Sprinkler related, which we do not teach in this course. That was going to be an add-on later on, but it's a very fun program to play with. You can learn for free. And like I have an older pro version that exports to DWG, so we can use it for details. They no longer sell that exact version that I have, but you can pay about $150 a year for a version that will allow you to export cool 3D details into as DWGs to import into your CAD software. Okay, so any PDF to DWG converter from anydwg.com, it's $180. That's what I use to convert PDFs to DWGs. It works about the best of anything I have found so far. And I would, I know AutoCAD and even IntelliCAD, what I use does this, but I feel like that program does it a little bit better. But there's lots of options out there these days. One of the cool things about it is it handles scanned PDFs really well. And it seems like most of the converters that are in the CAD programs do not handle that very well. And it does a pretty good job of it. So that's why I paid $180 of it. They also have they have a free trial that you can do a limited number. So you should go try it out. Autodesk Design Review 2018. This is a free program from Autodesk, the makers of AutoCAD and Revit, that I recommend you get. Some of you in the construction world may have heard of the PDF editing software Bluebeam. And many of the tasks that you need to accomplish in Bluebeam, you may be able to do in Autodesk Design Review for free. It's not everything, but it does a lot of the stuff. Autodesk no longer supports it, but still makes it available. And it still works great. You can, open PDFs, measure them, do all sorts of things. For PDF viewing, Adobe, I think I mentioned them earlier, they invented the PDF. We produce all our drawings in PDF for submission these days. And we used to use the Adobe Free Reader, but that's gotten bloated, runs really slow. So nowadays, I've been using Foxit PDF Viewer. It's totally free and seems to be lightweight and work well. PDFill, PDF Tools. This is it looks old school and cheesy, but it's a great free program for assembling, disassembling PDFs, doing all sorts of things like numbering pages in the PDFs. Has all sorts of free tools, editing PDFs even for free. It's pretty good. For editing PDFs, what I really use is Nitro PDF Pro, which runs about $250 these days. They've got a 14-day free trial. There's lots of options out there, but I've had success with that one. Seems to be working good. And Autodesk DWG TrueView, I mentioned that one earlier. That is just so you can open DWG files and convert them to earlier years if you're using something like NanoCAD 5 for free that is only compatible with 2013 and older CAD files. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about, that's the software end of it, the stuff that basically my system works with the cheap options. If you want to go spend the higher options once it's worth it that we just went over, you can, but then you have, the education, the understanding on how to do that, spend it where it's worth. Another thing, if you're going to be doing this kind of work a lot, I really recommend, standing desks. I'm standing now. I have a table here where if anyone's brave enough to submit their project for me to redline during the class, I stand at over here and will redline the drawings on camera. I'm not saying everybody has to get a standing desk, but the thing is these are repetitive tasks. It doesn't seem, if you're coming from the field, you may think, oh man, I working at a desk, that's easy. I'm not going to get hurt. But these repetitive tasks, sitting at the same place for a long time, that really, you can get hurt badly. Carpal tunnel, those types of things. Also really recommend you get a mouse with a scroll wheel like shown in the picture. This is the Logitech one I use. Just a basic scroll wheel mouse. Along with that, you may want to consider getting a second monitor, especially when we are getting into running a CAD program and doing hydraulic calculations. It can, here's my two screens, my calc program on one and my CAD program on the other. That can be hard to fit into one screen. And so I really recommend two. But if you can't, alternatively, when you're working on calcs, you can divide up your screen by holding down the Windows button and then either left or right to put it on the left or right side. And also on Mac, you can do the same thing by going to the green circle and then tile to the left or right. And so, that can help you without the monitors if you don't have it. But all of that stuff is going to make you more efficient, easier to work the long haul. Now, basically, we're getting to the nuts and bolts, and we are definitely deeper than an hour. I apologize, everyone. But we are teaching the mCAD system. And so here's just a rough outline of what that means. When I was trying to find work as a freelance designer, I had a hard time. And so I was looking for a solution. I'm a student. I read a lot of books, watch a lot of YouTube videos like many of you. About 6 years ago now, I believe, I came across the E-Myth Revisited book by Michael Gerber. And he talks about the entrepreneurial myth. And many people go out and start a business. They start as a technician somewhere. Let's say you're a plumber or a sprinkler fitter, and you get the entrepreneurial itch and you want to go out and start your business. Most people that do that generally forget about the other aspects of the business besides the technician side, what they're used to completing. And so maybe you're a sprinkler fitter working someplace making, I don't know, $40 an hour. And you're like, the company I work for charges $95 an hour. I could be making more. I'm going to start my own company and charge $55. And, you think you're making good money, but you forgot about, dealing with your taxes, dealing with getting new clients, just managing relationships. Like he talks about these three identities in a business. There's the technician, which is what we normally think of as what the business is involved with. But the technician is just 1/3 of it, and then the manager, and then the owner. And they all have different duties. And so I've really, learned about systems initially from this book, and that's how I developed my system. And so we're going to talk real quickly about some reasons to apply these principles that are in the E-Myth Revisited. And so one of the reasons is for scalability and growth. The book emphasizes the importance of creating systems that allow a business to scale. For a fire sprinkler contractor, that means having standard operating procedures that can be replicated by new hires, and that allows the business to grow without compromising quality. And also a reason is to we want to design a system that has a work-life balance. So by systematizing the business, the owner can delegate tasks and reduce their workload. This leads to better work-life balance, preventing burnout, and enabling the owners to focus on strategic growth. Consistent quality and service. So implementing standardized processes ensures consistent quality in fire sprinkler design and installation, leading to higher customer satisfaction and repeat business. So in financial stability, this is a big one, right, for everyone. The book teaches business owners to focus on financial metrics and profitability. A fire sprinkler contractor can improve financial stability by tracking costs, setting appropriate pricing, and identifying profitable services. How do you know how much you're making on a job? Are you tracking it? So let's talk about some ways that we can apply these principles. We can implement a business development plan, develop a strategic plan that outlines our goals for growth, our target markets, our marketing strategies. This plan should also include financial goals and metrics for tracking success. Ultimately, we're in business to make money, right? We're not doing this to as a hobby. And also now we want to focus on customer experience. This is really going to help us do this. Using the principles in the book, we'll be able to create a seamless, positive customer experience. This includes communication. Communication is everything. And really, if you think about it, CAD, what we're learning is just another form of communication. But the most important communication in your business is the communication between you and your clients, your customers. Okay, so communication, reliable scheduling, thorough follow-ups after installations or designs. Leveraging technology and tools. So we invest in technology and tools that streamline operations that are worth it, such as CAD software for design, project management tools, and customer relationship management or CRM software services. Now, our system should be designed for continuous improvement. Regularly review and update the process based on feedback from employees and clients. Encourage a culture of continuous improvement where the team consistently or constantly looks for ways to enhance efficiency and service quality. So by implementing these principles, a small fire sprinkler contractor can transition from a hands-on owner-dependent business to a well-organized, scalable enterprise that delivers consistent quality and grows sustainably. So the purpose of this course is to show you our system for creating fire sprinkler plans. And the system that we have developed so far is based around these 3 checklists that we're going to show you right now. So the first one, which we will be getting into next week, is the layout checklist. And so just briefly, I'm going to read this technician's note to give you an idea. It says, this is the first checklist in the mCAD process. The main goal is to get the job into a printable form so we can start the redline process. Once you've laid out the plan, view, and a section on the template, fill in as much information as you can. Don't worry if you don't have all the details yet. We just need enough to start designing the sprinkler system. You can try placing heads and piping yourself at this stage if you're unsure. And I'll take care of it when I review it if we get to that point. So this system is designed to work with people at every skill level. We have a lot of people that start with very basic skills. They just get the plan on the paper so we can have this PDF to look at. That's the very first step. And so in this course, you're going to be working with a template that we created and some architectural drawings of this house that I drew. And I'm going to be providing you with similar to, if you were working on a job for an architect, you receive or with a fire sprinkler contractor, we're going to receive CAD files from an architect and we're going to import them into our template. And we're going to make this PDF with that. That's the first stage that we're going to learn with checklist 1. Pre-calc checklist. This is checklist number 2. Now so if we read the note, it says this second checklist in the mCAD process, here you draw in the sprinklers and piping based on the layout review. Use the checklist to prepare the drawings for calculations. When you get to the calc nodes, do your best. It doesn't have to be perfect. You'll learn through the red line process. And that's something we're going to be learning about, the redlining process. If you're unsure about the nodes, just submit it without them and we'll review it together. Give it a try. You can do it. All right, so everything on this checklist is about getting it to the point where we can perform the hydraulic calculations that we were talking about earlier. There's different programs we can use to approach that, but we have to have a certain amount of information on the plans to be able to perform. So that's checklist number 2. When we get to the end of that, it's going to look something like this. It has a sprinkler system drawn on it, laid out. And, basically we could give this to the fitters in the field and they could install from this. But it wouldn't necessarily get approval from a jurisdiction for permit. So that's what our next checklist is about. Now, in this course, we're going to be practicing with an NFPA 13D job, which 13D jobs are basically the simplest of all sprinkler jobs, but it's just so that we can work through in the 8 weeks a simple project through all of these processes. The majority of these are going to be the same, whether you're working on a 13R. For those who don't know, 13D is for houses. 13R would be apartments. 13 would be commercial. That's, kind of a gross simplification. But it's all roughly the same. We got water out of the street going to sprinklers, and getting the process of all that information onto a document is roughly the same. So our final checklist in our process is the checklist according to the code book for the project. So we have an NFPA 13R checklist in-house that we use, and a 13 checklist. But for this course, we're just going through a 13D project, the final checklist. All of these things are dotting the I's, crossing the T's, so to speak, for the plan reviewer. It's just the little things that they need to see on the plan. Like I said, the sprinkler fitter could probably install from the last stage. That would be good enough. But to get a permit, we need to go to this extra level. And so you can see there's a few more things on here. We're just looking briefly at this drawing quickly. You might not have much experience with this, but we've added a cross section. Besides that, there's several more notes on the plan. But this is basically the final product that you will be producing in this course. So other resources I want to tell you guys about. I mentioned my favorite book, The E-Myth Revisited. Some other books I think have been very valuable in my journey. Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. He talks a lot about bootstrapping, and I really think he's right on that. When you start a new business, I think the best way to start is bootstrapping. And my system of CAD works with that, because we can start with free software if we had to. And then as we learn what we need, then we can purchase products where it makes sense. And that's what his book is basically about. Pay yourself first, only spend money on the things that actually make a difference. And okay, another book I want to recommend is Traction. The E-Myth Revisited, I would kind of call this is kind of like a sequel to that book, but it's written by someone else. It's not a sequel, but I feel like it's a sequel. The E-Myth Revisited is really about the spiritual or mental aspect of it, which I would say is the hardest part to get your mind around. This book, Traction, is very similar, but it gives some very practical steps that you can take to start creating the systems if you're stuck and can't do it on your own. This gives you some ideas and guides on how you could go about doing that. To help you jumpstart that process. So this is like the boots on the ground. E-Myth is the spiritual version. This is the physical. Okay, how do we get it done? I also, around the same time that I discovered the E-Myth Revisited, I also discovered David Allen's Getting Things Done book. And this is, a famous book in the corporate world. If you want to do a lot of things, one of the things that David says is the better you get, the better you better get. And it's the truth. The more you do, the more you're going to be asked to do. And he offers a system in order to organize all the data that we usually lose all around us. It just gives a lot of helpful hints on how to remain organized and how to process the data that we normally forget about, misplace, use, or lose. One of the best video, if you don't like to read, my friend Richard Grove did an interview with him. It's just a little bit over an hour. And this basically covers the book. So if you just want to watch this video, everything you need to know about getting things done is in here. And it's a great video. You can go over to Richard Grove's YouTube channel at Richard Grove Official. Oops. And just speaking about, this is the Richard Grove YouTube channel. I want to mention this because I am a graduate of Richard Grove's autonomy course, and I have a link to this in our course. And, if you want to up your game, you want to gain some high value skills, there's many people have helped me get to this point to produce this course in autonomy. It's many like-minded individuals who are trying to create content to promote their videos, to do live presentations like this. The skills that I am doing right now, even you saw we had some technical difficulties either, but we still were able to work through that eventually. These are the types of things, being able to work under pressure, those types of situations. These are the skills that we learn and practice in autonomy. So I recommend you check them out. Richard Grove also has, let's see. Forgot which slide we're going to next. I am the webinar host, live stream producer for Richard's autonomy lectures on Friday nights. And that's basically, I learned the skills to do this there. That's how I got started. And Richard also has a podcast called Grand Theft World. And I recommend you check that out. I also recently was able to be a guest shadow host on that on, I think I have, here's grandtheftworld.com. Probably should rethink my order of these slides. But if you go there, you can find out more about autonomy and the Grand Theft World podcast, where Richard goes over the news for the past week and puts it in context of world history. It's very interesting. It's a long podcast, usually around 7 hours. This episode 211 just happens to be the last one that I was shadow host on and got to promote this course on. De-escalating World War III. A lot of crazy things going on out there in the world right now. Another autonomy graduate that has helped me tremendously to produce this course is Chris Jansen, and he has a podcast on YouTube at it's the End Evil podcast. And we will be doing, we don't have one scheduled this week, but next week, he and I will be doing a workshop in SketchUp. Anybody who is in the beta boot camp may have been familiar with that. We did some test runs on some different SketchUp. We're thinking about putting together, we're planning and we're experimenting with concepts. We're putting together some SketchUp videos and a course for some basic stuff for people who are, basic carpenters, handyman, that type of thing. SketchUp is really an amazing program that Chris has been able to use to leverage his abilities as a carpenter in Northern California. I recommend you check out his podcast. He has a great interview he did here with Self-Powered Freedom from Colby Statrick. That seems like an interesting one. I also want to brag about Chris Carrasco, who's helping us in the background. He's a fellow serial entrepreneur. He is the co-owner of GNC Fabrication, if you need any fabrication done in Southern Oregon. He is also the voice of mCAD Espanol. So he's been helping us out with that, and want to thank him for all the hard work he's done on that. He's in the background helping tonight. And also, I want to give a big thanks to my beautiful wife, Monica, who is helping behind the scenes. This is a cut from the course that you will be getting used to. And Monica is very much responsible for the things that you see going on there. And she is very much behind the wheel with the platform that we are using, Kajabi. So if you are having issues, Monica has the answers, and so she can help you be successful in this course. You can reach out to her or me at any time. So that is the end of our lecture. I do need to break briefly. I will not take the entire 9 minutes, but I need to do a break before we do the Q&A, and I will be right back. So please, guys, don't go away. In just a few moments, I will be back for Q&A. How's everybody doing tonight?
Right. Doing well.
Had some technical difficulties, but we made it through. I learned a lot of what I did wrong, at least. Apparently, my slides have to be under a certain file size or they dump. It already is, Monica. Thank you. All right. Anybody have any questions tonight?
I'm trying to make my screen full.
Hey, Owen.
How you doing?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm much better.
Good. Southern California treating you.
It's beautiful down here, except we had a big earthquake off Frisco.
Oh, really?
I heard about that.
I didn't
Yeah,
catch
7
that.
point something.
Yeah.
Wow.
We've had earthquake weather down here, which is typically warm and very calm in the winter, which is odd. We call that earthquake weather, and sure enough.
That's interesting. I did not hear that. I've been too, my mind has been consumed with these goings on.
Yeah.
A lot of
I
last
get my
minute
screen to
things.
go full.
If you go, do you see view up at the upper right hand corner, and you should be able to choose between gallery or speaker, and you probably want speaker.
Yeah, that still keeps the same view. Different. I don't know why it shrunk down. That's really odd.
Do you have the do you have a maximize button in the upper right hand corner to make it bigger?
No. It's so strange.
Well,
there we go. I just double click the bar, and here we are. I'm good.
Sweet.
Colby, I have a question. If
Yeah.
may I jump in?
Yeah.
I have some confusion about industry foundation classes as they pertain to building information modeling.
Oh, okay.
There's a dog barking somewhere, it sounds like. But anyway,
Okay.
is it possible for a CAD program to be a building information modeling program and not use industry foundation classes? So, for example, do you happen to know whether Chief Architect uses industry foundation classes, or does it just have generic BIM capabilities?
Wow, I got to be honest with you, Michael. I'm not really sure what you mean by that. So, why enlighten us, please? I know you're a high school teacher that's teaching CAD, and I'm not really even sure what that means.
Well, I'm not either. That's the problem, and it's kind of hard to tease out exactly what this IF. First of all, the industry foundation classes are something established by, I don't know if it's the International Standards Organization or some kind of consortium, and I can't. They use .ifc as
Okay.
something, but it appears to me that was a mistaken nomenclature, because everybody thinks that .ifc is a file type, just like .dwg would be, or .doc or .docx, or a standard file type. But I'm trying to learn about these things. Of course, in a high school class, I don't have to teach it, because that's a past it would be collegiate level stuff. But nonetheless, I would like to know it for myself. And I'm trying to find out, if BIM would be an umbrella term, and that BIM could either be IFC capable or not IFC capable. And so, if any of you would like to help me research that, doing a quick search on the internet, it doesn't give any simple answers.
Right. Okay. So this is very interesting to me. This of what I'm seeing from what this says this is and what you're explaining. It seems like there should be something like this that I have never been made aware of. One of the problems that I see in the industry when we are required to provide a BIM product, it's just the only specification I have ever received is that it needs to be a Revit file. I've never received anything other than that. Like one of the things that I know, there's another besides what this is making sense about. There's another thing that we need to know. It's referred to as level of detailed that they usually are not very specific about how far detailed out the model needs to be as far as what all is included in it. And it's almost never clear in the contract. But it almost sounds to me, if I'm understanding correctly, tell me if this is what you think, but this is like a kind of like maybe not a file, like you said, but it is a kind of standard that they are trying to create so that multiple programs can make a file to this standard and can be submitted. Is that correct?
That sounds kind of like what it might be. And like I
Okay.
say, I kind of wonder, I've noticed that there's a lot of people who are writing about the IFC standard who act like they're annoyed because people keep thinking it's a file type. And my thought was, well, since you put a period in front of the IFC, maybe that's your nomenclature problem that's making everybody think it's a file type, because it certainly looks like a file type, with a suffix like that. But apparently it's not. So if anybody can help me figure that out, that would be a big help to me.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
So I wonder
Like
if,
that.
I've seen some things about Blender BIM, because Blender, which we wouldn't normally think think of as an architectural or mechanical
Right.
CAD program, but more of an animation or computer game type. But they have Blender BIM, and I believe it is incorporating IFC, and I believe that FreeCAD BIM is also incorporating IFC. And I know if you go into the FreeCAD BIM workbench, you can click on a door or a window or a
Oh, nice. Okay.
wall or the roof plane or whatever. And so I'm wondering and I know you can do all those things in Chief Architect, but I don't know if in Chief Architect you can export that as something that Revit can read.
Well, so for example, I bet you now that like AutoCAD even has 3D capabilities, BIM capabilities to some degree in it. And like CMS and TeleCAD, I can import a Revit file. But when I export it, it can't keep it a Revit file. It turns it into a DWG. But I wonder if that DWG somehow is in this, along these specifications. That's very interesting. I really would love to know more about that.
I
Because
think it's kind of it's not here yet in professional practice. It's here in hopes for the future, and that's what I mean. It is nice
yeah,
in Chief Architect's been around for a very long time, and you've been able to call a door in Chief Architect for a very long time, maybe even longer than the industry foundation class, whatever thing has been around. So I
right.
don't, yeah. Anyway, that was if anybody comes up with some information about that, I'd love to hear about it. Thank you.
Yeah, very cool. I basically, if I can kind of summarize the stuff that we're teaching and talking about, we're doing, and we're editing a DWG file because it's been around so long. There's many ways to edit that. The problem with these newer Revit files is there's only Revit, and what he's talking about is basically a standard to kind of do away with them being in a monopoly on that. And it's not, I mean, to my knowledge, it's not fully there yet. And like uh, jobs that go to bid, I haven't seen one that reference that when they want a BIM file. The only thing I've seen them reference is Revit specifically. Um,
And I believe
but
in Europe, and I think there are some Europeans on this call. Maybe they know, but my understanding is that Revit is popular in the Western Hemisphere or North America, and ArchiCAD is more popular in Europe, if anybody knows whether I'm right or wrong on that.
I've heard the same thing, but I'm not very familiar with the ArchiCAD or however you say it. But I've heard that as well. I think that one of the things that Autodesk has really successfully done over the years is getting into the school systems in the West. And I think that's how they've gotten such a stronghold here. You know, my high school in the 90s had auto licenses for AutoCAD 10, and that's how I learned on AutoCAD. So a lot of schools have licenses with Revit. Go ahead.
Autodesk has gotten into the school systems the same way that drug pushers get into the school system. The first one's free.
Yeah, it's a good model. But yeah, I look forward to learning more about that for the future. I kind of hope it does go more that route, so that if we're going to be doing BIM, it's something like that makes more sense, that we can accomplish with any software that can edit it, rather than just being tied to Revit $3,000 a year program.
Well, my understanding was that there, either in the 90s or the early 2000s, there was a major lawsuit against Autodesk, and they were putting up all these barriers to entry, and SolidWorks, which I do not believe had yet been bought by Dassault Systems,
right,
and a number of other CAD companies sued Autodesk for basically patent squatting or something like that. And this was a long drawn out thing, and Autodesk eventually lost something and had to open up some of their, they couldn't enforce their patents or whatever they were trying to do. And, my layman's understanding at the time was that lawsuit that Autodesk lost directly led to the explosion in 3D printing, because prior to that, no hobbyists and, people working in their garages could buy a 3D printer and do anything with it. It was all reserved to the major corporations that Autodesk was serving. But now I could be wrong about that. That's just I heard that or read that somewhere many, many years ago.
Yeah, so I actually believe that is, so the software that I use, CMS and IntelliCAD, I was talking about how ProJCAD and ZWCAD are all based off of the same platform. I can't remember what CMS stands for, but the IntelliCAD platform is this platform, I believe, that was involved. Oh, I don't think that's what it means for this, but it's
okay.
Something. That's a good guess, Martin.
I threw it out there.
Yeah. So Autodesk owned the IntelliCAD platform at a certain point, and I think that lawsuit that you're talking about, they had to give it up. IntelliCAD exists as it's this open source platform that people who want to make a CAD program can pay into. It's something like $100,000 a year to be able to develop your software on the IntelliCAD platform. And in fact, there's even a Fire Sprinkler program based off of it that's like $900. I didn't even put on my list because nobody's heard of it, but it's called Find Fire. It's over in Europe. But there's just so many of these variants. Like there's literally probably hundreds on the IntelliCAD platform that are out there for a wide variety of price too. Like everyone has a different, like if you're doing depending on the type of license, if you have several seats, you may get a better deal going with one manufacturer, or because they offer the better deal when you're buying those types of licenses versus I'm just buying a standalone license through CMS and IntelliCAD for $300 or whatever.
I just wonder, maybe if I could, throw two penneth in there. I'm a complete beginner, Michael, but what I do have a knack for is being able to, take a problem and, try and provide us an answer or a solution to that problem. So based upon my initial just research and my availability to, kind of compute the information I take in. I'm just going to give my understanding based upon my very brief read up of what the IFC is. So what I believe IFC is, and I could be completely wrong, but my understanding from what I've just read is that the IFC file is, like you say, it's a standardized file format that I think is relating to elements within an AutoCAD program that has rich metadata inside of each of those elements pertaining to things like material properties of that particular element that you're using in your drawing, the costs, structural and spatial relationships, between the elements that you are using. And I think the function of these file formats are to be able to share the data amongst different relational organizations that may all have eyes over the same plans and be able to extract the data quickly in terms of what these plans mean from their perspective, because of this standardized format of the elements being used, holding this rich data that can be exported or read through a universal language, let's say, or a universal universal metadata reader, let's say, that everybody understands, and that keeps, kind of unification across the understanding of what's being presented through the plan by using these standardized file formats. That's my understanding of it. I could be far out.
The really interesting thing that I caught was that you said something about you must have found something that it relates to DWG. That's it sounded like, and that makes a lot of sense to me. And I didn't mean to cut you off, Michael. Go ahead with what you were going to say.
Well, I was just going to ask Martin. So you think it's analogous to data that can be exported to a CSV file, for example, so that you can enter it into spreadsheet and some other kinds of formats?
I believe something along those lines. Yes, it's a universal language that can be read by all of the relational organizations involved in a certain plan, where that plan can be understood more through these standardized elements, which I believe are the IFC. I think when you use these particular elements, it becomes an IFC file. Something along those lines, but I've never used AutoCAD software. I'm new to the course. Colby's invited me. This is my first time here, so hi everyone.
This is really interesting, actually. I just went into my IntelliCAD, and I can export my file as an IFC file out.
Okay, so in other words, if let's say an architect in North America is using Revit and he's collaborating with an architect in Europe, who's using ArchiCAD, the American architect can export the IFC, the European architect can import the IFC into ArchiCAD, and they can keep working and collaborating together.
Yeah, that's what I'm understanding. That's pretty cool. And I'm wondering, so the big thing to bring this together for everybody, why the main reason people want us to do a BIM model here is for what they call clash detection. Okay, there's this program called Navisworks, another Autodesk product. There's the manager of the project will get the files from every subcontractor, the HVAC guy who has his 3D BIM model, the sprinkler guy who has his 3D pipe model, and he puts them together in Navisworks, and it does clash detection, and it finds all the spots where they're interfering with each other. That's really the big reason why we're requested for these models when we are on jobs. I don't know if that helps clarify. Like there is other benefits to having all of that information. For example, you can basically set it up so you can click on a button that gives you a report of every piece that's in there, because it's in there as data, not just an image or a thing, right? Like you were talking about being able to export into an Excel sheet and stuff. Basically, everything that's in there has information associated with it in the model. And so we can click some buttons, theoretically, if we set the model up correctly, and just generate reports of information that is very valuable to us for various purposes.
BD. Oh, go ahead, Miguel.
I was just going to add that, it sounds to me, and I got out of the business of construction way back in 2007, so I'm a little bit old on this stuff. But it sounds to me like what they're doing is, putting the specifications into the drawings. So
Yes.
it allows, people to estimate, like an estimator, and people that are bidding the jobs to estimate the projects based on similar, numbers and specifications. So that might be another piece of why they're doing it like that.
Yes,
It also mentions here. It also mentions here. I mean, I just kind of popped the question into to ChatGPT, and it also mentions here that it enables the exchange of detailed building and construction information between different software applications, including AutoCAD. Now, it then goes on later to say that users it's for collaborating on complex construction projects with multiple stakeholders. So I think this IFC file can be read by multiple different types of software platform that does or has different functions. Like, for instance, costings. You may be able to open an IFC file in, say, like you say, Microsoft Excel, I'm just guessing, or some sort of financial planning program, and it might give us like lots of information relating to the cost side of that particular plan, let's say. Or you may be able to open it up in another relevant and complementary software for other reasons. Financials is the only one that I can kind of think of right now, being a beginner.
And there are a lot of, depending on how you're running your business, there can be a lot of advantages to use out of those things. The fact that we're talking about learning a potential way to do it without the $3,000 a year price tag is a big deal to me, because that's a barrier to start, basically. So if there's more and more things that are becoming available, I definitely like to see alternatives out there to Revit.
I would think that if you can tell how many, for example, bricks you need, or how many, feet of pipe, and there should be some ways to automate bidding so that you could put bids out to multiple, or have some crawler, I don't know, I guess a crawler probably wouldn't be up to the task, but it could certainly help in getting better prices for materials.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think across the board, it's looking to kind of speed up the holistics of the project. So everybody else involved, it enables them to get an understanding of their piece, through the IFC standardization. That's what I believe it is, and it is a file format.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so, like, a lot of the stuff that I was talking about, kind of complaining about Revit, is kind of associated with BIM. Like, there's a lot of good things about BIM. Like, there are lots of potential good problems to be solved with BIM. The problem with Revit specifically is just, like, it's good at modeling, but it's not necessarily good at producing the final drawing. And the 2D CAD are much easier. Like, you can basically make anything look the way you want with 2D CAD. You're just drawing lines. If you can draw it on paper, you can do it with an AutoCAD in 2D, But with the BIM programs, a lot of times they're limited to the program and what you can show and see. And if you need to go beyond that, you may have to use their tools that are like 2D CAD to kind of mask build something over the top of it to make it look right. There's basically you get into all these situations where there's limitations. Again, you can spend a lot of time and set them up to where they look pretty good, almost as good as how I could make it look in CAD. But there's just the amount of time to do the job. Like, those things come at a cost. So if the value of the extra time it takes you to model isn't worth the time that, like, all that information you're getting from, it's like, oh yes, it's easy to do a material takeoff for a sprinkler system, right? Because you press a button and it spits it out. But here's the thing. If one project takes me twice as many hours to model in Revit or any BIM program, even though it can do that, but it only takes me 1 hour to do a material takeoff by hand, is that really a benefit? Like, there are some jobs that are going to be, the answer is yes, and some the answer is going to be no. And it really just depends on you, what you're working on, your workflow, how big your company, like so many things. You know, there's like just different variables.
Do you
But, you know,
have, do you feel like you're up to speed with the BIM? You know, I'm always hoping for some like-to-like comparison between, you know, using this technique and somebody who's equally skilled in the other technique. And because a lot of it is learning curve stuff. And if one is not that far along the learning curve, he's really good at what he's been doing for 15, 20 years, but he's not as good at the thing he's doing for 5 months and starts to think, hey, this is so much slower. What do I need this for? I hear a lot of that.
So, you know, I got to be honest, I am not doing jobs in BIM on a regular, like I got BIM certified unrelated. I've done other drafting besides fire sprinklers. I got certified in Revit back in 2016. I was working at a place doing barn homes, completely different type of thing. I'm kind of losing your question though.
Just about like-to-like comparisons of equally skilled operators.
Oh, yes. So, right. What I was getting at is for sprinklers, I feel like I have to be honest that I cannot personally give a like-to-like for myself, but I ask everyone I can this question that is using Revit on a regular basic. And the general consensus that I get is it's roughly twice as much time. Even if it's only like, say, half that, like only 50% more. There's, you know, if you got really good at Revit, okay, there's still going to be like a point, certain jobs where it's going to make sense to not do it, you know, or do it one way or another.
It's probably a scale factor, right? The skyscraper, you're probably going to want the BIM, but a barn dominium, you don't need it.
Exactly. And the thing is that the majority of the projects that are happening around the world are small projects. I mean, they just are. There's more, they're going on everywhere all the time. There's, you know, I'm a small independent contractor working with small contractors. You know, sometimes they get big jobs. They're different scale contractors I work with. But the majority of the projects they're working on are smaller, quite frankly, because they're smaller companies and they just can't take on that many big projects. And there's just tons of this work everywhere. All the, you know, like the fuel of the economy of our country is small businesses started by mom and pop shops everywhere, right? You know, and they're the ones that need this tenant improvement done and 3 sprinkler heads moved so they can put in their Chinese restaurant or whatever it is, you know? Those are the jobs that are happening everywhere, every day, all the time. And, you know, somebody like that doesn't want to pay you to draw out the whole system in building in BIM so they can get a permit to move 3 sprinkler heads. It just doesn't make sense.
Just a quick one for me. So you mentioned 13D and 13R.
Yeah.
Is 13 relating to residential or commercial?
So the National Fire Code, NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, there's different numbers associated with different codes. 13 has always been the fire sprinkler code book. The rules which is for commercial buildings, the rules for apartment buildings and homes are newer. They came out more recently, and so they're variants of 13. So the 13R is apartments. It's a variation of 13. It's like a simplified version of 13, simplified rules. And then 13D is another more simplified version for houses. And the major difference is 13 protects the building and assets, and 13R and D are just to give you extra time to vacate the building for life safety, but not as much about protecting the structure, but this keeps the costs down.
Okay. So how long usually would it take based upon your knowledge of your previous students? I mean, do we have any students that you took in the last course that are kind of flying and, you know, kind of really doing well in terms of their business setup and, you know, their interaction with the industry?
Yeah. So it's, you know, it kind of varies because I've got a lot of people, some people with zero experience in construction, some people with zero experience in sprinklers. Other people have got that have experience kind of with it, but just not, you know, like they have experience with what is known as MEP, which is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. They usually have some knowledge of sprinklers, but so it really depends on your skill level. But you know, basically, by the end of the 8 weeks, if you do everything, you'll be able to do, you know, this is the smallest job we have, and you'll be able to do it in a certain amount of time. You know, like I could do pretty handily a couple of these a day. You know, it's like, just how much time does it take you to get to that level? You know, I'm 21 years to this level where I can do a couple a day, like pretty handily. But, you know, I would say I was probably there in about 2 years of my career, or maybe even for like a house, even faster. But it's like I learned, you know, I learned from zero with a person that didn't really train me that well. Like where I worked, I didn't get trained by someone who had a system. I got trained by someone who just dumped me into whatever and was like, yelled at me when I did it wrong. You know, like how most places are. You know, so like I have created all of these things to help you be successful. Like basically, I have some guys who knew almost nothing, and you know, in a couple of months, they could basically, you know, do a house relatively easy, you know, quickly, like this size that we're doing in the course, probably in a day.
Wow.
You know, and so it's just, it's all goes more complicated from here. But it's just, it's a good basis, to start with. And this is a unique thing that there's a big demand for everywhere. Fire sprinklers, they're trying to mandate them more and more. California is leading the way here in the States. Everything now has to have sprinklers, and we're right next to California, so we've been trying to push for work down there.
We were talking about Airbnbs here in Portland. They're trying to push for those units. Everyone.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yesterday, I think.
Yeah, that's another thing. There's all sorts of weird things that's going on in Portland. They have I just happen to know because I've worked with a structural engineer on doing house plans and everything else. I've designed ADUs in Portland. Portland's plan for for urban growth. Part of their urban growth strategy over the last few years has included accessory dwelling units or tiny houses, allowing people to add them when they were not allowed before. And now they're talking about making everyone who has one sprinkle them, or everyone going forward. Who knows? I don't know if it'll be retroactive. Another thing that is going on here in Oregon that keeps going back and forth. They've passed emergency legislation twice to stop it, but we're trying to catch up with California in regards to our acceptance of the International Building Code. And one of the places we're the farthest behind from California. Like California requires sprinklers in all buildings, all houses, everything now. Oregon wants to catch up with them, and the place where they feel like they're lacking the most, and they don't want to immediately require it on all houses. They feel like that'd be too burdensome. But they decided that the place where it's the biggest issue is what are known as residential care facilities or adult foster care homes, which are all over the state. And so now those are all requiring fire sprinklers, but they did it for a while, and then they passed emergency legislation, put a pause on it for 2 years. Then it came back on. It's on again, but they're still trying to fight it. It's kind of funny. And anyway, so there's always things like that. Plus now the tiny homes there's a push for. It's
How
kind
much
of a
does that add to the cost? Let's say of a
good
tiny
question.
home, just
Yeah,
because a
good
tiny
question.
home is supposed to be cost efficient, but if you have to put some sprinkler system in it, you know, that has sophisticated sensing capabilities, that's got to add tremendously.
Yeah, that's exactly. And so that has changed over the years, and there's a lot of things that have been developed since I started in 99. It was relatively new in Oregon at that time for sprinklers to be going into houses. The residential 13D hadn't been adopted that long, and it was like a new frontier. And there were a lot of things at the beginning that really made it cost prohibitive, and investors and developers really did an effective job of getting sprinklers not put in houses, like getting these rules set in places that they could not order that sprinklers because they knew it was coming, and so they set these laws up ahead of time that sprinklers cannot be required to be put in. So there's like a big mess going on with that, because they're trying to push for it. But so they were right, basically. They were able to effectively do that because at that time they were right. We now have things to bring down the cost. National Fire Protection Association, or the AFSA, one of them, they try to compare it to the cost of carpet in a house. And that's correct as long as you have the water flow. That was always the problem. There's things that we have to deal with that now. A house needs to flow 2 sprinklers for 10 minutes to let people get out of the house. And a lot of times a residential supply for a house for the regular water supply, especially in the past, was not really adequate for that. One of the problems was meters. They didn't know. They basically had never tested the 3/4 inch meters in that type of application. And so this was at the beginning. You would often have to pay for an upgraded meter, which could be $4,000 at a jurisdiction, just because they don't want you to have the next size bigger meter. Like, there's so many factors that go into this. The cost of the actual meter is not that much different, but in the city of Portland, if you go from 3/4 to 1 inch, it's like a $4,000 difference. They don't want you to have more water. And so those types of things went into this. Well, about 10 years ago, I believe it was, the NFPA went and tested all of the meters. They paid for it to test them at the flow needed, because they had never been tested in this situation, and they paid for that to happen, and they produced it in the book. And now it's kind of not an inhibiting factor anymore because they work fine. Nobody had ever tested it. So it's not as big of a problem as they thought. So we don't have to upgrade meters anymore. That was one thing. It still could be, if you don't have sufficient water, like say it's an existing house and you have to add it for some reason. Well, the old water line could be like, who knows what, right? It could be 3/4 inch galvanized, and it could be corroded now and only getting half the flow through it, right? So it's like, do you make them pay who knows how much these days to get a new water line put in from a plumber? Probably a couple grand.
Are old houses not grandfathered in?
Well, it depends. Often, if they are, like, for example, these adult foster care homes, they're an old house that doesn't need sprinklers, but once they decide to make it an adult foster care home, then they have to do it. There's all sorts of scenarios like that come up. And so often what the sprinkler contractor is doing on these situations is they're using a tank and pump, because you just eliminate all of those problems But the tanks and pumps since COVID, as far as I know, are going for $5,000. So it makes it way easier, but that's like doubling the cost of a lot of sprinkler systems, especially in like an ADU. It's probably more than doubling it.
Where do you put the tank in a tiny home?
Yeah, it's exactly 100%. That's another problem. Like the tank and pumps are designed to fit in a standard closet, but still, that's a lot of space in a tiny home. That's so then you got a problem. How does it connect? Tiny home usually connects with just like a water hose to things, right? When it's parked. But that's not sufficient for a sprinkler system. Like we have to have like a full-on 1-inch pipe connected. And so it has to be like a semi-permanent connection once it's parked there, if it's on wheels or something. I've dealt with projects like this in Portland. And, it's a tiny home on wheels backed into this spot, and they have a hard piped, plastic 1-inch line going into it to feed the sprinkler systems coming from the city main. That's how they've been dealing with it in Portland a lot of times. But yeah, it can be a big deal if you don't have the water supply. That's when it gets expensive, basically. It's not too bad if everything you have works, the existing supply that you have will feed it. The cost on them is not like I think the comparison to carpet is pretty accurate. If you don't need anything extra for your water supply, but as soon as you do, that's when the costs get crazy on a house.
I think a good argument for tiny homes is that it doesn't take 2 minutes to get outside of a tiny home. The door is right there.
100%. Absolutely. I would agree. It doesn't make, there's a lot of these things that don't make sense, right? I mean, I feel like that's a great argument to why would it even need one? Like you're never more than 2 minutes from door. Why would you need a sprinkler system? Like what are we talking about? But that's government.
Colby, could I maybe just ask, say if, maybe we're 2 years down the line and we're, like I'm really, really competent, confident, and, pretty good at what I've learned to do. Where and how would I kind of like look to approach the industry in terms of, like natural routes to market? Do I look to put my message or offer in front of sprinkler installation companies? Do I look to, put my advert out there for, or maybe even tender to like the councils over here in the UK to offer them as, an outsourcee? Offer myself as an outsourcee.
So that's great.
Work that we do.
Yeah, I would. So like I've been kind of doing this to some degree, helping different guys find work in your area. Like there's sprinkler contractors in the UK. I would love to start working in the UK they don't use NFPA. They have a different code book over there. I can't remember the name of it. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, different standard and some British thing.
British standard. I think it's the actual codes here are, and it's built into the building regulations over here as well. Particular buildings have to, by law, have the fire sprinklers.
In the States, they're going by what's called the IBC, mainly the International Building Code, or the International Residential Code. Basically, the International Residential Code is way that builders can build houses with tables and stuff instead of hiring engineers. Just use beam tables and whatnot. It's more cookie cutter type construction. But the IRC has advanced a lot. You can really do it custom stuff. And it used to be you had to choose one method or the other, but now in the new IRC, you can like it used to be if there was a certain portion of the house that you couldn't figure out on your own through the simplified method, you had to hire an engineer to do the whole project. But now the code will allow you to hire an engineer just to do that one aspect. So it's you can really do a lot with the IRC method. It's really come a long way.
Colby, have you heard that in the United States there has recently been, and maybe this is not recent, maybe this has been ongoing, but an effort by architects to require architects even for residential structures to require those.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. When yeah, I haven't heard that, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean,
Well, I think
don't.
that they've lost a lot of their, over the decades, they've lost a lot of their the bread and butter, if you will, because they're mostly just doing commercial, I think, at this point, and mansions, of course, or
Right.
houses that are supposed to be grand, but builders have, I think, largely taken over the design of residential homes in America.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that 100%. One thing I realized I didn't really completely answer your question, Martin. I want to say real quick. So, talking about what you could do with this. So I would say that straight away, finishing this course, you go knock on the door of some fire sprinkler contractors in your area. You would be getting a job offer in the 25. I mean, I don't know what the comparable is over here, but like the $30 range to start out. They would just the fact that you're there talking about fire sprinkler design and it even exists, they're going to be interested in talking to you about it and probably hire you on the spot. Now, there is a certification that you can get. It's called NICET. You don't have to have an engineering degree. It's a path for people who work in the trade. NICET. NICET level 3 in the States will allow you to design anything, anywhere. I had a NICET level 3 in the state of Washington, but here, Oregon doesn't accept NICET. And in the state of Washington, it's tied, your license is tied to the contractor you work for. So once I went independent, I couldn't maintain it anymore. I mean, yeah, unless I wanted to have like my own sprinkler contracting business, but it's really expensive to maintain a level 3 license. It's like $50,000 a year in Washington. Because that allows you to do any sprinkler project as well, installation. So it's tied to having, anyway, so you could be, once you get to the level, it takes 2 years minimum before you could test for level 3, working at a place, having experience. But basically, once you have a level 3, for myself, I just let it expire and not bother with it, because for myself, I'll just hire people. It's a limiting factor to some degree to me. Like, I'm not interested in having a NICET anymore, because I'm interested in running a crew of people working, not just the jobs that I could do myself. But if you went down that path, you could start making good money at a sprinkler contractor. You definitely would be making 6 figures by the time you got to the level 3, wherever you are. Any sprinkler contractor in any area. After like a couple of years, some places don't even care. Like if they already have a level 3 designer, it's more about what you can produce. If you could produce 10 jobs 10 times faster, but you don't have a NICET, well, you're more valuable, really.
I guess it also relies on having like a working knowledge and kind of comprehensive understanding of like building regulations and the
Totally.
the wider implication of what it is that we're designing, so we can kind of cut through that that standard, let's say, and then that would kind of look to separate you from the those that are not the cowboys, let's say. Obviously, it's that standard of
and I'll say that fire sprinklers is a little bit of a unique niche in that there's more CAD work. Like, it doesn't require you don't have to have a degree, and there's more CAD work in it than most trades, what they have. And so I kind of losing my point. I'm sorry, I'm getting rummy a little bit. But what am I trying to say? What were you saying again? I'm sorry.
So my original question was, how would we go about like looking for and putting our offer out into the market to be considered for work? And then I kind of went into speaking about, maybe having a working knowledge of and understanding of the the
Oh,
wide
that's right.
like the
Thank
building
you.
regulations, etc.
Yes. Okay.
Maybe even having a real good understanding of the costs of materials and things like that, because
Yeah.
we would get like a job or some sort of plan with a budget attached to it. So part of the job is to kind of understand all of the different combinations of different materials and products to come
that's
together
where I was going.
to fit the budget.
This is good. So thank you. So basically, I feel it's an interesting trade. That's where I was saying, compared to other trades, there's kind of more CAD work in general that is done by not engineers. It's a potential for anybody can learn this, and you really do have, like, just through the process of doing it, learning how to sprinkle all these buildings, you learn how buildings are built. Like, it's inevitable. I started in the sprinklers, but at a certain point in my career, I went to work for a structural engineer, created plans for all kinds of stuff. And I didn't really realize until I worked there how much I understood about how buildings are built. And it was really from this career in fire sprinklers that helped me get there, because when you're designing the route, if you think about, nobody sees this piping normally, right? So we have to know how the structure is built. We have to know how to read the plans really well so that we can run the piping through the structure with the least amount of work and have the piping be hidden. And so this pipe is throughout the entire building, and you just get to learn how a building is built really well and how the different systems work together, where we need to be located in those systems, how we move in and out. So you really do get a good education on building construction in general and the trades, I would say.
Thank you, Colby.
Yeah, thank you. It's getting, I want to thank everybody again for putting up with, I know we've lost a few people now. It's getting later, but thank you for putting up with our technical difficulties. And the good thing is that I feel we very clearly figured out what the issue was. So it won't be happening next week. We'll be dealing with some other technical gremlin.
There you go.
Yeah, something will happen that'll trigger our complexity, but we'll work it out.
That's right.
Is there anybody else that has any more questions this evening? I think that this is, I guess, if nobody does, this is a pretty good place to leave it, to keep our recording
quickly, maybe.
Yeah, go for it.
Just quickly, so this might help everybody that's new. So in between the Thursday meetings or the Thursday lectures, do we receive anything during the week? Is there anything else going along? Do we get homework?
Yeah, good question.
These kind of things.
That's a good question. I really did not say clearly what to do this week. That's good question. That should have been at the end of my slides. And sorry to everyone that's not here, that's not hearing this. But really, the assignment this week is to download a trial of something like AutoCAD and just start playing. Next week, we will be giving you guys files to open up in AutoCAD and play with. And so just basically, like, if you could just get a free trial of some CAD software installed and operational by next week, that is basically the main goal of this week.
Sounds good.
Or either a free trial or NanoCAD 5, which is just totally free. And there is in the Kajabi, if anybody needs help getting access in there, there's resources that will walk you through how to download and install NanoCAD 5, which is free. And I believe there may be one on there to how to install CMS and TeleCAD, but for sure NanoCAD 5 is on there. Detailed how to go, where to go on their website and walk you through it, installing it. But it's a pretty light program, and just see if you can handle it. That's the big thing about these 2D CAD things. It's interesting. A pretty old computer can run them. you will just be limited. The size of the file, the bigger it gets, the slower it'll run when you're working on it. And that's where you'll find your limitation. You should be able to handle all the files we're dealing with. They're going to be relatively small that we're providing you. But you could get to the point, if you have a crappy old computer, where you get a file from an architect and your machine just can't handle it. And it will basically just run very slow as you're trying to move around in the file. It'll just lag when you get to a file that you're working on that's too much for your machine to handle. As long as the file size is kept small enough, even an old computer will work on it. You can get started. Once you realize what you think you need, then you can spend the money on a computer. If you're only doing 2D, you still don't need that. Even bigger files, you don't need that advanced of a computer.
Soon, Colby, I've just had an idea. Soon, you will be sitting down with, someone like CMS IntelliCAD, giving them the benefits of the opportunity for them to be able to give you a set of licenses to offer your students throughout your 8-week course, knowing that when the student gets used to using that software, there is the potential for them to go ahead and buy the license. So just something there for you to think about, as well as
we do have an affiliate.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that was my other thing. I was just thinking about as well.
If you click on, that's a great point. If you click on our CMS IntelliCAD link, if you go in the course and you click on the link in there to download CMS IntelliCAD, we do get a small portion of that. It's we're talking about a $300 and some program. If you get it half price, which I encourage you to do, it's only like, $180 or something like that.
Sounds good.
And so then where you get, I believe it's something like 7% of that.
Where do we find that link, Colby?
It's let me see. Monica, are you in here? Is it in week 1's material or weeks 2? I can't remember. Okay, so there should be a section that you already have accesses to called resources, and it should be in there.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Monica, in the background.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Feel free. Otherwise, we will get this wrapped up for the people who are viewing the recording. Doesn't drag on too long for them. And we will be doing some post-processing and getting the recording hopefully available. I'm not going to promise it'll be out tomorrow. Let's see, this is Thursday. We'll work on it tomorrow, see if we can get it out. But I think we can probably get it out Saturday for sure. Probably going to need your copy as well, Martin. Based on the way I can see this recording is going, I think we are going to have some issues.
Yeah,
and we also missed hitting recording on Zoom until the Q&A. So a lot of lessons learned tonight. But thanks everyone for coming. I guess we'll just go ahead and wrap it up.
Colby, just before you do go, just send me over the intro video as a separate file, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay. Just the waiting room music.
Yes, please.
Absolutely, you got it. Thank you, sir.
And maybe just a quick graphics pack as well. I don't know if you have any of those backgrounds and things like that you can send me.
Yeah, I have some stuff that I can send you for sure.
But what I may be able to do is just give it a quick cut up and render it before I send it to you, so you could just upload it straight away.
That would be magnificent. Anything you do, appreciate it. All right, well, let's not burn these people's ears with our shop talk. what we're relating is getting you a final product sooner rather than later. But we look forward to seeing you again next week. Another thing that I'm thinking of last minute that we did not demonstrate well on the course. I should have had a slide for. We'll be sure to do next week. There is a community in Kajabi that you can sign up for and communicate with Monica and myself on there, asking questions. There's also a calendar. If you need help beyond the Q&A to get something done, say you're having a hard time getting your software downloaded or wherever we're at in the program, you're having a hard time, there is a calendar that we are making available where you can schedule time with me so I can help you get it accomplished. So we want to create every opportunity for you to be successful. If we can't answer your questions here in the Q&A, we have an appointment scheduler where you can meet with me and we will walk you through to help you make it happen. We want to have everybody be successful. Well, there's nothing else. Really appreciate everyone showing up tonight and again, putting up with our technical gremlins, but it's what making us be able to perform a better show here. Hopefully we're better than the beta, and we'll be getting better each episode as we go on. All right, guys, I think that is a wrap. If you want to pull it, Monica, whenever you're ready. Have a good night, guys.